At the beginning of the story, we see a futuristic prison where a show called Mafia was taking place. As the show began, the game master explained the rules to the audience and the players. There were 11 players in this game, 9 civilians and 2 mafia gangsters. However, no one knew who was who. The goal of the civilians was to find the mafia and eliminate them from the game, while the mafia's goal was to pretend to be civilians and survive until the end. Every day, all players would vote on who they wanted to eliminate from the game, and the chosen person would actually be killed in the way they feared the most. The game master's drones would take the selected player to their death each night. The last person alive at the end of the game would win $1 billion. If, in the final round, 1 civilian and 1 mafia remained, the mafia would automatically win. Then, we see a highly advanced room where all the players were seated. Soon, drones arrived and tattooed each player's wrist with either civilian or mafia. After that, the game master began introducing the players. The first player was Luca, an 85-year-old billionaire who looked much younger due to advanced medicines and chemicals. He was a gambler who had amassed his wealth through betting, and now, he had come to this game to bet on his own life. His grandchildren were impatiently waiting for his death back home, unaware that Luca had written in his will that if he died in this game, they would receive nothing. The next player was Eli, a 38-year-old engineer suffering from cancer. Doctors had told him he only had 3 months to live, so he joined this game to secure a huge amount of money for his family before he died. When his wife learned about his decision, she tried to stop him, wanting him to spend his final days with his family, but Eli didn't listen. Next, we see 2 more players, Butcher and Ivan, who were prisoners brought from jail. This game show had a special agreement with the government that allowed any prisoner to participate. If they won, they wouldn't get money, but they would gain freedom, while the prize money would go to the government. After the introductions, the game master asked the players to reveal their identities, but everyone swore that they were civilian. Then, they were given 10 minutes to decide who would be the first to be eliminated and sent to their death. Outside, friends and families of the players watched the show on TV, their hearts pounding. One player, Constantine, didn't vote in this round. However, a contestant named Mary voted for Killian, and Peter supported her choice. That's when Butcher realized he had seen both Mary and Peter on TV before. It was then revealed that Mary was a 24-year-old famous ballet dancer. Unfortunately, one day, she had a terrible accident due to heavy rain, leaving her legs so severely injured that doctors told her she would never dance again. From that day on, she developed a deep fear of rain and lightning. However, she had a chance to regain her ability to dance through an advanced surgery that would give her artificial legs, but it required a huge amount of money. That's why she had joined the game. In reality, Peter had also entered the game just to help Mary. He was her biggest fan and had already sold many of his possessions to support her. However, upon hearing this, Mary began crying because, in truth, Peter had been stalking her for years, and she never liked him. Seeing this, the other players felt that Mary had an unfair advantage. She had someone who would support her no matter what. This made them decide to eliminate her first. At that moment, Peter suddenly declared that he was the mafia, but time had already run out, and Mary became the first victim of the game. When her wrist tattoo was revealed, it showed she was a civilian. Mary's chair suddenly moved upward towards a large black sphere on the ceiling. Peter tried to save her, but he was tied to his own chair. As soon as she entered the mysterious black sphere, Mary lost consciousness and was confronted with her worst fear. She found herself trapped in a dense jungle at night. Suddenly, heavy rain started pouring, and as soon as lightning struck, she started running. However, the lightning kept chasing her, striking repeatedly to drive her toward a cliff. With no other option, Mary jumped off the cliff to escape the terrifying storm, but while she was still in midair, lightning struck her, causing a painful death. Her body was burned to ashes and absorbed into the black sphere. The game master then announced that the first night was over. The drones began flying above the remaining players, ready to find the next target. This time, the players chose Butcher. Enraged, Butcher began cursing everyone. His chair was then lifted into the black sphere. Next, we see his psychological test, conducted before the game. The psychologist asked him several questions, but Butcher gave very few answers. He claimed he wasn't afraid of anything, but later, he admitted that he didn't want to die as a fool among fools. Inside the black sphere, Butcher found himself in a terrifying death pit. Soon, 2 muscular wrestlers appeared, and the audience watching the show cheered for them to beat him to death. The wrestlers brutally attacked Butcher, who couldn't withstand their strength. They lifted him and threw him around like a rag doll. However, suddenly, Butcher grabbed a handful of dirt and threw it into one of their eyes, then attacked them with a bottle. He repeatedly struck one wrestler until he died, but at that moment, the other wrestler pushed him back. Butcher didn't stop. He kept picking up whatever he could find on the ground and launched powerful attacks on his opponent. He eventually broke the wrestler's bones and killed him. But to his horror, the wrestler came back to life again and again. No matter how many times Butcher killed him, he kept reviving. Finally, after multiple deaths, the wrestler stopped reviving. Meanwhile, in the real prison, Butcher's fellow inmates cheered for him. Butcher thought he had finally won and would be set free. But as soon as he took a step back, his foot slipped and he fell onto a metal rod lying on the ground. It pierced his skull, killing him instantly. Back in the game, Peter was still furious over Mary's death and said Butcher deserved his fate. A few moments later, the Game Master announced the next voting round, but this time, they only had 8 minutes. Suddenly, Constantine declared that he knew who the Mafia was. It was then revealed that he had the ability to see glimpses of the future since childhood. He always knew when he would fail a test, which girl would betray him, and so on. Soon, people started calling him the Black Messenger. As he grew older, he appeared on parapsychological shows and even worked with the government to provide war strategies. His greatest fear was dying as an old man. Now, Constantine claimed that Peter was the Mafia, but Peter countered, asking why. If Constantine could see the future, he let Mary die even though she was a civilian. Constantine replied that he wanted all the prize money for himself and didn't want to share it with any civilians. Peter, realizing Constantine was lying, voted against him. Eli and Laura also voted for Constantine, but the rest of the players voted for Peter. It was then revealed that Peter was actually a civilian, meaning Constantine had lied. Next, Peter's psychological test was shown. He had said that he wasn't afraid of anything except losing Mary. However, when the psychologist made him think harder, Peter remembered that, as a child, he had been terrified of water. As Peter's chair was absorbed into the black sphere, he found himself facing his biggest fear. He was in the middle of the ocean in a small boat. Terrified, he started rowing toward an island, but suddenly, a hole appeared in the boat. When he tried to cover it, his hand was cut, causing blood to mix with the water. The scent of blood attracted sharks. Panicking, Peter rowed even faster, but the boat kept filling with water. Desperate, he attacked one of the sharks with his paddle, killed it. As the other sharks swarmed to eat the dead one, Peter seized the opportunity and jumped into the water, trying to swim to the island. But suddenly, he saw that the island had disappeared from its place, and soon sharks arrived and devoured him. When Peter was about to die, he felt as if Mary's soul had come to take him, and he smiled while taking his last breaths. Meanwhile, in the game, before nightfall, the players got another chance to choose a player's name, but this time they had only 6 minutes. Then we see a player named Walter, who was a 45-year-old military officer. He had fought many wars for his country, but after witnessing such a difficult time in his life, he was deeply traumatized. He had joined this game so that fate could decide whether he should live or not. In reality, Walter had made a huge mistake during the war, which resulted in the deaths of many young soldiers. Walter had actually seen Ivan's case on TV, so he accused Ivan of being a child killer. Then we are introduced to Ivan. Ivan was just an ordinary student who, one night, went out drinking with his friends. His car was moving at a dangerously high speed, and suddenly, they met with a terrible accident, in which 2 of his friends died. Ivan and the driver somehow survived this accident. In reality, a woman on the road had saved their lives. But later, during the court case, the other boy's parents falsely accused Ivan of being the driver to save their own son, and as a result, Ivan was sent to prison. His biggest fear now was dying in jail. Ivan then told everyone that he was innocent and had been framed without reason. Then he told Laura that he had seen her somewhere before, but Laura denied knowing him. After this, Laura accused Walter of being a mafia member, to which Walter retaliated by calling her a mafia as well. Soon, the argument escalated, but in the end, Walter voted against Laura, and Laura voted against Walter. Eventually, Luca, Ivan, and Isla also voted against Walter, making him furious. Finally, Constantine also voted against Walter, making the majority decision clear. Walter was chosen. It was then revealed that Walter was actually a civilian, meaning both mafia members were still in the game. As soon as Walter's chair sank into the black void, he found himself back at the moment when he had made the biggest mistake of his life. He tried to warn his men about an enemy attack, but it was already too late. Soon, the enemies surrounded his team from all sides, and Walter's soldiers started dying like insects. Within moments, Walter's nightmare turned even more terrifying when the walls around him disappeared, and more enemies attacked them. They mercilessly slaughtered Walter's soldiers one by one. Finally, Walter stepped outside and started firing bullets at the enemies. But seeing his comrades die and the walls vanish, he realized that his end was near. Ultimately, the enemies shot Walter to death. A while later, we see that another evening had passed in the game, and it was time for the next victim. This time, the drone selected Laura, and we were shown her story. Laura had a house, a good job, and a happy family, but unfortunately, she fell into the grip of addiction, which ruined her life. She even refused help from her husband. Soon, her son died, and her husband left her, leaving her completely alone. She then revealed that her biggest fear was heights. Laura said that she had not stepped outside her house for 8 years. But one night, when she was by the roadside, she witnessed a horrific accident. It was then revealed that Laura was the woman who had saved Ivan and his friends' lives. Additionally, the other boy's parents had forced Laura to lie in court and give false testimony. Hearing this, Ivan was stunned, but he still forgave Laura because now the truth was out. He was innocent. Finally, it was announced that Laura was also a civilian. As her chair moved toward the black void, Laura told Ivan that she would be rooting for his victory. As she entered the void, she found herself on a plane heading toward a terrifying dark cloud. Soon, this dark cloud attacked the plane, causing severe damage. The plane's parts started breaking off, and the ceiling began to collapse. A flight attendant came to fix her seatbelt, but suddenly, the darkness swallowed her too. One by one, all the plane's parts broke off and fell, and eventually, Laura too fell into the jaws of death. After this, the players were given 4 minutes to choose the next person. Constantine immediately took Ivan's name, leading to a heated argument. During this time, Isla realized that Kieran and Kate knew each other. Kieran accused Constantine of being the mafia, but Ivan voted for Isla. At this moment, all the players had different opinions. Constantine, Isla, and Luca voted for Ivan, while Kate and Kieran voted for Constantine, and Ivan voted for Isla. According to the rules, the chosen player needed to receive the most votes, so it was announced that voting would happen again. This time, Luca changed his vote to Constantine, while the other 4 kept their previous votes. At that moment, Constantine shocked everyone by voting for himself. This was the first time in the show that someone had voted for themselves. Finally, it was revealed that Constantine was indeed the mafia. When he entered the black void, he found himself descending a staircase. Suddenly, a man bumped into him and called him Grandpa. Hearing this, Constantine became furious, but soon he started coughing violently. Suddenly, several mirrors appeared in front of him, and he saw himself aging rapidly. Now, descending the stairs had become extremely difficult for him. As he reached the end, Constantine suddenly started laughing loudly. He said that he had cheated. The truth was that he was not afraid of dying from old age. In fact, he considered it the most beautiful death. Anyway, another evening passed, and now it was time to choose the next person. They chose Ivan, but then it was revealed that he was also a civilian. Seeing him leave, tears welled up in Kate's eyes. But Ivan said he had no regrets about dying because now it had been proven that he was innocent. Before leaving, he told his mother that he loved her deeply and apologized for not being a better son. In the black void, he found himself in a jail, where guards were taking him to his execution. Ivan imagined himself on a beach with his mother, but suddenly, the guards shot him to death. Now, only 4 players remained in the game, one of whom was the mafia. This time, they had only 2 minutes to vote, leading to another heated argument. Isla said that Kieran and Kate were a couple. Then we saw Kieran's story. Kieran was a young man who joined the game on a dare from his friend. The day before the game started, he met Kate, and for some reason, Kate felt so comfortable with him that she shared all her secrets. She said she was afraid of heights, deserts, and dreams. She revealed that she had grown up in an orphanage, so she always felt like there was no one in the world to protect her. Neither of them knew that they would meet again in the game. The players argued for a long time until the time ran out. The computer chose the next player, and Kate's name was announced. Her chair moved on its own toward the void. As soon as they entered the void, they found themselves standing on a glass floor surrounded by a terrifying storm. When they took a step, the glass started breaking. Suddenly, Kieran ran toward Kate, and they both started running together, with the glass breaking behind them. Suddenly, the ground beneath them collapsed, and they fell onto a black desert. Just then, they saw a glowing triangle on top of a rock and decided to follow it. As they moved forward, the rocks behind them turned into giant snakes chasing them. Eventually, they faced a monstrous creature, Kieran's worst fear because now he feared losing Kate. In the end, they reached the Game Master. This meant that only one civilian, and one mafia member remain. Before announcing the winner, the show went to a commercial break. The game master revealed that Constantine worked for him and that he had used Kate to find a way to end the game. Finally, he thanked them for participating, released them from the dream, and let them exit the show. Later, Isla returned home and told his family that he was the last mafia, meaning he had won the game. He survived not just 3 months, but 10. Meanwhile, Luca also survived the game but received no money. He disinherited his grandchildren and donated his entire fortune to Kate's orphanage. Meanwhile, Ivan's mother received flowers every day, proving that his death was mourned by the entire nation. So, would you participate in such a game? Let us know in the comments. See you in the next video.